Winter maintenance. Today we're going to talk about brake system, what to look for over the winter. This is very, very important. Definitely take some time in looking over everything. There's a lot of stuff to look over. Your lines, there's no nicks or tears in them. Make sure the coating over the line is still good. You don't want to have anything that's smashed, or if it's smashed anywhere, replace it. Same with your steel brake lines that run along the chassis. Just inspect it, make sure there's no smashing of a rock hit it or whatever, and it should be nice and round. Just double check if it has any dings or nicks or smashes. Definitely replace it. Your brake calipers, make sure you pull them off. Make sure that this O-ring, the rubber here, is not tore or ripped or anywhere. Make sure everything's good. Make sure your fitting's tight in the bottom. Look at your brake bolts. This one's bent a little bit. You can see there's a little flat part on there that hit the rotor. I'm big about just replacing all your brake bolts every year. They're nice and smooth. You don't have a caliper bound up. Now pads is very important. You can go a whole season on them, or you can go 10, 15 races and replace them. These are both angled, as you see, as they're tapered. I like to run a pad spacer, especially in the rear, to keep these pads so they're nice and straight. The brake pads ain't bounding up when it does get a big angle on them. Big thing is, if your pads you put new pads in towards the end of the season and they're not wore down like this or cracked or anything, they're just glazed over, take them out to the concrete, and just kind of scuff them up, just a little circular motion, front, up and down, just to get that roughness back in them and that glaze off the pad. Now rotors, there's a lot to look at this. I always like to look to make sure your ears are not cracked. As you see, their ears are broke off these. Just make sure your bolts, that bolt to your hub, are nice and tight. I like to replace them every year, just for insurance. I go every year and I replace my rotors. The cupping, as you can see, this one is cupped really, really bad. So that's not very good. And then just make sure you look for cracks everywhere, even like on the surface. You'll see them out here on the edges, and especially these ears. Maybe take a Scotch-Brite pad and kind of scuff them up. Get all the rust off them. Just don't let them sit with rust. Same thing with your fronts. I always like to replace them every year, just so you have new stuff and the cupping. Just inspect everything. Make sure there's no cracks, anywhere. And check your wheel studs while you're having it. The masters. This is a very, very important thing. Probably 80% of the cars that come in here, there's something wrong with their master cylinders or your brake bias. Look over your master cylinders. Make sure your cap is there's no any tears or any, make sure it's all nice and tight so you don't have brake fluid going anywhere. Replace the brake fluid every year. I try to go 15, 20 nights on brake fluid too. Just make sure this is all nice and clean. Make sure that the rubber is O-ring. If you run this style, make sure your reservoir is all good and clean and not cracked anywhere. Make sure if you run like a remote reservoir, your line from your master to your remote reservoir is still good. If you run the true bar setup, just make sure that if you run these springs, some people run spacers, just make sure this is nice and free, it ain't bound up. Just make sure your balance bar is nice and straight, because that binds everything up, binds your brake adjuster up when you're going, you know, one way or the other, front to rear. Same thing with these clevises. Make sure they're nice and free. There's nothing binding anything up. We run this Joe's brake adjuster. I think it's one of the nicest ones out there. You know, see how free this is. Just make sure your brake adjuster is nice and free. Make sure the sleeve goes from end to end. Make sure that your cable is not flared or anything. Make sure, you know, all your master cylinders are all nice and tight to your pedals. If you run brake gauges, you know, you could just make sure they're bled out and everything. Just replace your brake fluid. You know, AFCO or Willwood, they both really good brake fluid. Be like if it starts to get a little brown, you know, start replace it. Especially if you are the rotors get hot, you see them glow red. You know, definitely replace your brake fluid. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. And thanks for watching.